I never thought a single sentence could carve such a scar across my chest. That evening, the wine glasses clinked faintly against the polished oak table, the candles flickered, and her laughter cut deeper than any silence ever could. "At least my ex had a bigger," she said, with that smirk curling the corners of her lips. A joke, or so she framed it, yet every syllable struck me like a hammer breaking glass. I froze, the fork dangling in my hand, steam from the pasta rising between us like an invisible wall. My heart pounded against my ribs, fighting to break free, to scream, to demand an explanation. Instead, I stared, pretending I hadn't heard. She leaned back, swirling red wine, her eyes glinting with playful cruelty. Maybe she thought it harmless teasing, maybe she wanted a reaction, but all I felt was the sting of comparison, the humiliation of being measured against ghosts from her past. The air thickened. I noticed details I'd never paid attention to before, the way her nails tapped impatiently on the stem of the glass, the way her gaze avoided mine when I didn't immediately respond, the way her tongue darted out to wet her lips as though reliving memories I wasn't part of. My wife, my partner, the woman I trusted above all others, had chosen that moment to peel away the veil of devotion and reveal something darker. I should have laughed it off. I should have said, "Well, jokes need better timing." But I didn't. My throat tightened and the room seemed colder. Behind her words lingered questions I never wanted answered. Did she still compare me? Did she still remember every intimate detail of another man? Was I simply a substitute she settled for? I forced a smile, though my hands trembled beneath the table. "Interesting thing to say," I muttered, keeping my tone measured, calm, deliberate. She tilted her head, feigning innocence, though a spark in her expression betrayed satisfaction. She wanted me unsettled. She wanted me wounded. Inside something broke. I remembered the nights I had carried her home when she drank too much, the mornings I brewed her coffee just the way she liked, the promises whispered under blankets when the world outside didn't matter. All of that felt suddenly cheapened, overshadowed by the ghost of a man who apparently still lived rent-free in her mind. I stared at her across the table, no longer seeing a companion, but an enigma. My chest ached with betrayal, though she hadn't stepped outside our marriage physically, at least not yet. Still, her words betrayed something: discontent, desire for more, hunger unsatisfied. I lifted my glass, stared into the crimson swirl, and told myself this was only the beginning. If she wanted to play with fire, I would learn how to burn without showing flames. Sleep evaded me that night. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of her breath as she drifted into dreams while I wrestled with reality. Her joke echoed in my mind, repeating itself with every tick of the clock. "At least my ex had a bigger." Such a simple phrase, yet it hollowed me out, replacing warmth with doubt. I turned slightly, watching her profile lit by the moonlight seeping through the blinds. She looked peaceful, unaware of the storm she had unleashed inside me. The woman I married, who once held my heart as though it were a fragile treasure, now lay beside me like a stranger. I studied her features, the delicate curve of her cheek, the faint smile tugging her lips even in sleep, and I wondered if those lips once whispered similar words into another man's ear, praising him where she mocked me. Questions burned hotter than anger. Why would she say it? Was it a test, a careless slip, or a confession disguised as humor? Trust felt like shattered glass beneath my bare feet, every step forward promised pain. I wanted to wake her, demand answers, force honesty from her mouth. But something colder settled over me: patience. If she sought to belittle me, I would not grant her the satisfaction of a rash response. I would not rage, nor plead, nor crumble. Instead, I would observe. I would listen, watch, and gather truths she thought hidden. My silence became armor, and within it, I began crafting a plan. The following morning, I played my role with precision. I greeted her with a smile, kissed her cheek, asked about her day. She seemed surprised by my lightness, perhaps expecting lingering tension. Her eyes searched mine for signs of injury, and when she found none, she relaxed. but inside, the wound festered, sharpening into resolve. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Colleagues' voices blurred into background noise while her words replayed again and again. I pictured her ex, faceless yet towering, laughing at me from the shadows of her memory. I despised him though I had never met him. Worse still, I despised myself for letting insecurity eat at me. Yet buried beneath the pain was a new hunger, not to compete with him, but to rise above her games entirely. That evening, I returned home early. She greeted me with that effortless charm that once melted me. She wore my favorite dress, perhaps unintentionally, perhaps as part of some subconscious ritual. I studied her closely, every gesture, every glance. When she bent to pour wine, her phone buzzed on the counter. She ignored it, continuing her movements with practiced ease, but I noticed the faint twitch in her jaw. Suspicion grew root. Was the joke merely an arrow meant to wound, or was it a window into something darker, something alive between her and that ghost she compared me to? My chest tightened, but my face remained calm. I told myself, not yet. Don't strike yet. Collect every piece. Build the truth brick by brick. When the time comes, she won't see it coming. Days turned into a blur of observations. I began moving through our marriage like a detective disguised as a husband, every gesture she made stored carefully in the archive of my mind. At breakfast, her laughter over trivial texts seemed lighter than usual, almost practiced. When she showered, she carried her phone with her, screen angled away as though guarding secrets. None of these actions were damning alone, yet together they painted shadows I could no longer ignore. One evening, while she scrolled absent-mindedly on the couch, I leaned close, resting my head against her shoulder. The glow of the screen illuminated her face, soft yet distracted. My eyes darted briefly downward, catching the edge of a message notification before she locked the device with practiced swiftness. She laughed it off, ruffling my hair. Nosy, she teased, though I heard unease buried beneath the levity. Inside, my stomach twisted. Lust is dangerous when entangled with suspicion. It blurs lines, tempts vengeance, ignites urges beyond reason. I began imagining not only who she might be speaking with, but also what she might be saying. Did she confide in another man, mock my shortcomings, share secrets that belonged only to us? Her careless remark about her ex had planted a seed, and now everything she did watered it until it grew into a choking vine. At work, I avoided colleagues' conversations, instead scrolling through memory after memory of her smiles, her touch, her sighs at night. I once saw those as mine alone. Now I wondered how many had been recycled from another chapter of her life. The thought hollowed me, yet simultaneously sparked something reckless. I wanted her to feel the sting I carried. I wanted her to taste betrayal the way I tasted it every time she avoided my gaze. One afternoon, a coworker named Eliza lingered by my desk. Her voice was smooth, her presence warm, and though I had always respected boundaries, that day I found myself watching her lips as she spoke. She noticed my distraction, smirked faintly, and brushed her hand against mine as she handed me a file. Electricity surged through me, not because of attraction alone, but because the forbidden suddenly seemed like justice. If my wife could taunt me with another man's shadow, perhaps I could create a shadow of my own. That evening at home, I observed her again. How she avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions, how she lingered too long in the kitchen typing messages with her back turned. She kissed me goodnight, lips soft, movements mechanical. Lying there beside her, I realized I no longer felt only love, I felt calculation. I wanted truth, but I also wanted her shaken, the way I had been. I whispered into the dark, though only I could hear. If betrayal is already here, then so be it. If not, then she'll learn what her words truly cost. The game had begun, though she didn't yet know she was playing. Temptation grew sharper with every encounter. Eliza lingered around my desk more often, her eyes holding mine longer than politeness allowed. At first, I told myself it was harmless, a distraction, a balm for my wounded pride. But I knew better. Every time her laughter brushed against me, every time her perfume lingered after she left, I felt the tether to my wife weakening. At home, the divide widened. My wife smiled when she spoke, but her smiles never reached her eyes. She kept her phone close, fingers dancing across the screen as though composing symphonies I was never meant to hear. I asked questions, casual, indirect, but her answers were clipped, rehearsed. She accused me of being paranoid when I pressed too firmly, yet her voice trembled ever so slightly. Paranoia is easy to deny, but guilt is harder to hide. One night, she slipped into the shower, leaving her phone on the nightstand. A rare mistake. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared at the device glowing faintly in the darkened room. My hands trembled, torn between restraint and revelation. Curiosity clawed at me until restraint finally snapped. I picked it up. A pattern lock. I knew it. Her secrecy wasn't imagined, it was real. I placed it back quickly, forcing myself to breathe, to steady the storm inside. That moment confirmed everything I had suspected. Even if no proof lay in my hands, the fortress she built around her privacy was enough to convict her in my mind. My wife, the woman who once swore transparency, now lived behind locked screens and half-truth. The joke about her ex wasn't simply a careless jab, it was a breadcrumb. And I was following the trail, whether she wanted me to or not. Meanwhile, Eliza became harder to ignore. One afternoon, she invited me for coffee after work. I hesitated only briefly before agreeing. We sat across from each other in a quiet corner cafe, steam rising from our cups, her eyes studying me as though searching for an unspoken confession. "You seem distracted lately," she said softly. I shrugged, offering a practiced smile, but she pressed. "Whoever's hurting you doesn't deserve you." The word struck me harder than I expected. She had seen through me, perhaps more clearly than the woman I lived with every day. When her hand brushed mine across the table, I didn't pull away. A spark lit, dangerous and consuming. For a fleeting moment, I wondered what it might feel like to surrender, to drown my doubts in another woman's warmth. But then I saw my wife's face in my mind, smirking, mocking, comparing me to another man, and fury returned. No, I thought. Not yet. I would not let desire dictate my choices. Betrayal deserved precision, not impulse. That night, I lay awake again, the distance between us in bed a canyon. She turned away, scrolling her phone, light from the screen casting shadows across her back. My chest burned with equal parts anger and hunger, for truth, for vengeance, for something more than silence. The time for patience was drawing to an end. The breaking point arrived on a Thursday evening, subtle at first, then erupting like a storm. I came home earlier than usual, a stack of files tucked beneath my arm, ready with the excuse of too much to handle at the office. The house was quiet, except for the faint murmur of her voice drifting from the kitchen. She was laughing, low and soft, the kind of laugh she hadn't shared with me in months. I paused in the hallway, listening. Her words were hushed, intimate, stitched with warmth she no longer gave me. I couldn't catch every phrase, but one cut clear through the static. "I miss that." My chest tightened, breath faltering. That could mean anything, yet in my mind, it meant everything. When I stepped into the kitchen, she froze. Phone pressed to her ear, eyes wide as though caught in headlights. She forced a smile, waved casually, then turned her back, whispering hurriedly before ending the call. "Just my cousin," she said, slipping the phone into her pocket. Her lie was clumsy, obvious, insulting. I didn't challenge it immediately. Instead, I walked past her, set my files on the counter, and poured myself a drink. The glass clinked against the countertop, sharp in the silence. She busied herself with dishes, hands shaking just enough for me to notice. Finally, I spoke. "You've been distant." My voice was calm, steady, yet heavy with accusation. She didn't turn around. "You're imagining things," she replied. The words were too quick, too defensive. I leaned against the counter, studying her. "Am I? Or are you imagining someone else when you're with me?" That made her stiffen. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she turned, eyes narrowed, lips pressed tight. "You're being paranoid," she said again, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. I stepped closer, lowering my tone. "Paranoia doesn't need a passcode on your phone. Paranoia doesn't hear laughter meant for someone else. And paranoia doesn't remember the night you mocked me with your ex's shadow." Her eyes flashed with something, anger, fear, maybe both. "It was a joke," she whispered, though the conviction had drained from her. "No," I replied, shaking my head. "It was a confession." Tears welled, though whether from guilt or rage, I couldn't tell. She tried to hold my gaze but faltered, looking away toward the floor. That was all the confirmation I needed. Proof wasn't always in words or messages. Sometimes it was in the silence, in the refusal to fight for innocence. My chest felt both lighter and heavier all at once. Lighter because the mask had slipped, heavier because the truth weighed like chains. She had betrayed me, not just with words, but with secrets, with attention given elsewhere, with laughter that once belonged to me alone. I didn't yell. I didn't throw accusations like daggers. Instead, I simply whispered, "You broke us." Her shoulders slumped, tears spilling freely now. For the first time, she seemed smaller, fragile, cornered by her own lies. She reached out, but I stepped back, leaving her hand trembling in the air. In that silence, the marriage we once had dissolved. The house felt heavier than stone that night. She sat across from me at the dining table, eyes red, fingers trembling around a glass of untouched water. The same place where her joke had first cut me was now the stage for its consequence. I watched her, not with love, not even with anger anymore, but with clarity. "You don't understand," she whispered, voice hoarse. "It wasn't what you think." I leaned forward, steady, calm, unshaken. "Then tell me what it was. Tell me why you compared me to someone else in our marriage. Tell me why you hide your phone like a thief guards stolen treasure. Tell me why laughter meant for me now belongs to another man." Her lips parted, then closed. Silence. That silence told me everything. She couldn't give me an answer because the truth would crush her more than my accusations ever could. Tears welled again, sliding down her cheeks in uneven streams. For a long moment I said nothing. I let her sit in the weight of her choices, the distance she had created, the ghosts she invited into our bed. Then, finally I spoke, slow, deliberate, sharp. "You once joked that your ex had something bigger. You were wrong." She blinked, startled, confused through her tears. I continued, voice unwavering. "What I have is bigger. My loyalty, my love, my patience. I gave you everything, more than he ever could. Bigger than him in every way that matters. But you threw it away for shadows." Her face crumpled, a sob escaping her throat. She reached for me again, desperate, pleading. "Please don't, please, I didn't mean." I pulled back, shaking my head. "No. You don't get to laugh at my worth and then cry for my forgiveness. You wanted to test me, to break me with your words. Now you'll live with mine. I may not have what you measured me against, but I had something far greater, and you'll never touch it again." Her cries filled the room, raw and uncontrollable. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders trembling as if her body itself understood what her heart denied. She had lost me. Not because of size, not because of comparison, but because she mistook devotion for weakness. She underestimated silence. I rose from the table, each step deliberate, leaving her drowning in her own regret. Behind me, her sobs echoed like a song of endings, and for the first time in weeks, my chest felt free. As I walked out of the house, I thought of Eliza's words, "Whoever's hurting you doesn't deserve you." She was right. Betrayal wasn't my burden anymore. It was hers to carry, her reminder of the night she joked about something small and lost something immeasurable. That was my answer, my revenge, my truth. She wanted a laugh. Instead, she found her tears.